Namaste. Welcome to Indian History and Archaeology with me, Dr. Lajvanti Shani. Today's presentation is on the oldest known seafaring technology in the world, coming from the Sindhu Saraswati or Meluha sailors of the Arabian Sea region. The Bronze Age navigation technology in this region was based on the biannual monsoon wind pattern, which are in fact the monsoon seasons in the Indian Ocean region. From May to September, we get the southwesterly monsoon winds, which bring the rainy season into India. And then from December to February, the northeasterly winds drive the rain down southwest back into eastern Africa. Why do we need to know this? Well, if you are interested in seafaring or if you're into adventure and would like to know about how our ancestors, the early sailors, went about their business, stay on and find out more. Besides the biannual monsoon wind pattern, there is a corresponding flow of the Somali current in the Indian Ocean right under the surface. This is a major equatorial current which emerges from the east coast of Africa right outside of Somalia, hence the name Somali Current. The wind stress on this current flows into the Arabian Sea, which is the northern part of the Indian Ocean, and it forms a doubled force with the potential to drive any sailboat at about 45 degrees off its course. At the same time, the vessel would also be bowing slightly into the wind. These are factors which any proficient sailor would naturally become aware of. The northeastern corner of the Arabian Sea, where the monsoon trade winds and the current pivot towards the Arabian landmass, is where seafaring first developed. The first seafarers were undoubtedly coastal people of the region who were probably exploring and exploiting their environment for subsistence. Possibly they were the prehistoric people of the region. These early fishermen and sailors would have observed the environmental conditions as they made the discovery of wind-propelled navigation, meaning some kind of rudimentary sails. Square sails were perfectly suitable for sailing with the tailwind, which is blowing into the sail directly from behind. We get evidence of this from archaeological material, square sails etched on potsherds and amulets from Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Also, a terracotta boat model from Lothal, which was a port site, and it had a shipbuilding dockyard. Having said that, sailing with a tailwind would have made the sailors completely dependent upon the wind. I talked about two monsoon seasons and the Somali Current. That gives us two sailing seasons. December to February, the northeasterly winds going from India towards the Persian Gulf and Africa, and then the return trip from May to September with southwesterly winds coming from Africa towards India via the Persian Gulf. Of course, the sailors wouldn't want to get caught in the mid-sea cyclones or take a very, very long time sailing all the way around the Arabian Sea. So this would actually necessitate charting a deep sea route, cutting directly across or even cutting diagonally across the Arabian Sea. This would actually make for a safe and fast voyage. There was an oceanographic study carried out by Perry and Walker during the months of July to September, where surface winds of the Somali Current were observed to exceed 2 meters per second. Now consider a sailboat using this current and the corresponding wind to propel the sails, and we get a navigational speed of around 7 kilometers per hour. If we apply this to the actual distance traveled in nautical miles, of course, we can arrive at an approximate number of days that a sailboat would take to reach India coming directly from Africa or the Persian Gulf. There are studies on ancient navigation technologies which demonstrate how early humans may have discovered the possibility of moving on water bodies. From fallen trees near rivers or a bunch of logs tied together to create a raft. And then again, you have dugouts created from wooden logs again. These were early forms of boats or sailing vessels. Coming to later stages, where we see in the Sindhu Saraswati civilization planked boats. These are also seen in later periods of early historical and medieval as well. The initial attempts may certainly have been more cautious and not as adventurous, uh, with these early sailors keeping to the sides of the land, hugging the riverbanks, or in this case, the coastline, keeping land within sight. Again, we have this from archaeological evidence also, where the amulets show a crow on the boat. So these crows would actually be sent out looking for land. As long as the crow kept coming back, they knew they were near land. Then again, this bird could also be used to find out how far they were away from the port that they were reaching. So it could apply for the deep sea sailors as well. We have archaeological evidence for a coastal sea route coming from the Makran coast in Balochistan, with sites like Sutka Gendor and Meri Kalat. However, the occupational deposits at these sites is meager, meaning they did not have continuous occupation, and so they were occupied briefly whenever the sailors would stop over there, using it as a pit stop. So these would be sailors coming from the Indus area and hugging the coastline along the Makran coast, going into the Persian Gulf. Alternately, it could also be used by the deep sea sailors in case of a cyclone or any kind of accident. From these two sites, Meri Kalat is the only one which actually has a complete mature Harappan assemblage. But then again, this site is located a little bit on the interior, that is possibly on a rivulet. The most spectacular coastal sites of the Sindhu Saraswati civilization come from Gujarat and Kutch. Lothal, Prabhaspatan, Kuntasi, Nageshwar, Bet Dwarka, and Dholavira, also possibly Bagasra and Shikarpur, which are slightly on the interior. As for Lothal, as I said earlier, besides being a port site, it was also a shipbuilding dockyard, the first ever in the world. These coastal sites of Gujarat, along with the Omani coastal sites, were primary to my research hypothesis, which was of a deep sea route for this trade network. These sites have given us the largest collection of trade-related assemblages or artifacts. They were also manufacturing centers with materials produced here, including conch shell bangles and carnelian beads. The most convincing evidence for this deep sea route come from sites like Ras Al Junais and Ras Al Had in the Omani Peninsula. These are located directly across the Arabian Sea from the Gulf of Kutch. And there are the large black slip jars which were found on both sides of the sea, at the Gujarat sites as well as the Omani sites. These massive jars were only found at coastal sites and possibly used for carrying drinking water on the boats. The ethnographic record which I've used for my study is oral history as related from father to son among the Kharwa community of sailors from Kutch, Gujarat, going back a few generations. These were sailors who have traveled on the Indian Ocean between Gujarat, the Persian Gulf, and Africa. According to the sailors in Mandvi, Kutch, the square sail is ideal for the northern Indian Ocean. These Gujarati sailors used to make a one-way voyage per season, coming back with the next wind regime. Sometimes, of course, if they were not able to get the trade material in time, they would have to stay back for an entire year and wait for the next wind coming back towards India. One of the people I had interviewed during my master's research was Shivjibai Fofindi, a retired captain or Nakhoda, and a master ship model maker from Mandvi. His forefathers had sailed mainly to Africa, and according to him, these voyages used to take between 20 to 30 days. In this ethnographic account of the 19th century, sailing in this region with a square sail, which was called Barcha in Gujarati, Shivji Bhai related one such voyage carried out by his grandfather from Africa to India, which was covered in a record 14 days with a strong favorable wind behind the sails. Such a voyage on a wooden sailboat would perfectly utilize the corresponding Somali current, cutting directly across the Arabian Sea. Given a wind speed of 2 meters per second, as I mentioned in an earlier study, this voyage would cover a distance of 3,456 kilometers in 20 days. For a 14-day voyage, counting up to 336 sailing hours, I worked out the math for a required surface wind speed to be slightly below 3 meters per second. However, if there are any conflicting winds or if the wind is too strong, it can actually cause problems for the boat. It can break the mast, which is the long pole on which the sail is hung. And if that goes, the boat becomes completely useless. In such situations, the sail would have to be halved or brought down a little bit so that it doesn't tear with the wind. Or, of course, if the mast is at danger, then they would have to possibly change their course, find a port to take shelter in, as I mentioned, in the Makran coast possibly, until a favorable wind prevailed. Now that we've established the mechanics of seafaring from oceanographic to ethnographic evidences, let's turn to look at historic sources. These are detailed in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and of course we have the Arab historians who have talked about seafaring in this region, more about the dhow trade in the later historical to medieval history. Sindh was the focal point of the sea trade activity from the late 1st millennium BC to late 2nd millennium CE, which is right until the arrival of the Europeans. Seaports like Bhambhor in the early historic period and Debal in the medieval period were prominent ports of Sindh. And of course, Gujarat and Kutch had port sites like Bharuch as well. According to the Periplus, the early ships of this region were made of wooden planks which were sewn together with jute cord. My ethnographic sources also told me that the 18th and 19th century wooden boats in India were made with sewn planks which were then oiled. Apparently, these ships were more pliable in the Arabian Sea region as well as the deep seas, and they could weather the storms much better than the later dhows, which were made with wooden planks nailed together. These wooden ships have been sailing on the Arabian Sea into the Persian Gulf and down to the east coast of Africa for almost 2 millennia now. In fact, the early historic period right up to the present time. The boat building technology has now shifted to the dhows rather than the sewn wooden planks. They now use nails, of course, but they also use the state-of-the-art technology on these wooden ships, which are much, much larger than what used to ply on these seas earlier. Possibly a reminder of the large Meluhan ships as mentioned in the Mesopotamian sources. To sum it up, the Arabian Sea basin was conducive to the origin and development of ancient seafaring technology. Moreover, as we know from all evidence, it was the Meluhans or people from the Sindhu Saraswati civilization who took the sea trade into the Persian Gulf. This coincides with the flourishing of the coastal sites in Gujarat and Kutch, especially, which of course happened to be in the mature Harappan stage. Large ships came out from these port sites, which again may have been made possible because of the timber available from the Gir forest. Besides being expert ship makers and sailors, these ancient people were quite clearly excellent navigators too. Ancient navigation depended upon the positions of the stars and the sun. In other words, they had knowledge of astronomy as well. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Please do let us know by clicking on the like button and leave a comment for us as well. Thank you again. Namaste. To watch more such videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and click on the bell icon.